one aspect of a godly wife is that she has she is the key to effective prayers. It's so true. It's so true. I know,
How have you
dudes.
experienced this?
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Pastor and Wife podcast.
We welcome you to hang out with us today.
I'm Hansel.
I'm Natalie.
Okay, we're going to talk about the characteristics of a godly wife. Okay, what you have to say about that?
We did characteristics of a godly husband. That was one of the first ones we did.
Yes.
So is this all on me this time?
I don't know, maybe. Well, I have a scripture that describes a wife of noble character from the Proverbs.
Yeah.
So it's kind of long, but I think we'll split it up and then we'll talk about it. So this is in Proverbs 31, most commonly known as the Proverbs 31 woman or wife. So the wife of noble character, starting with verse 10, it says, "A wife of noble character who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life." Okay, is that good?
Okay. I think you need some better questions here. Yeah. Well, okay. Amongst women, the scripture is very. We have like a love-hate relationship with this chapter.
Okay.
Because, I mean, this is like a lot for any woman to live up to like all of these things.
Sure.
So I'll just start off there. So, I mean, you know, this part, no one has any problem with.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I think, this is great. Her husband can, wait, did you read? Yeah. Husband can trust her. Which version? I have this other version up right now. Bringing him the husband harm and not good. All this stuff is great. So that's good.
All right. So I ended at verse 12. Mm-hmm. Now comes the, historical time period that this was written in. But
Yeah.
you can apply that for things women do today. Verse 12 says, or verse 13. So we finished verse 12. Verse 13 says she selects wool and flax and works eager with her hands. She is like the merchant ships bringing food from afar. She gets up while it is still night, and she provides food for her family and portions for her female servants.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah, so this is a good household. They have enough to afford a servant.
Yeah, she has servants
help.
and she has help. She works with her hands. She manages the household. She apparently burns a midnight oil, but also gets up while it's still night early. And so she could manage the food and everything, so her household is all fed.
Wow, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Okay, so now verse 16, starting there, it says, "She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks. She sees that her trading is profitable." Wow, she's on the stock market. Mm-hmm. And her lamp does not go out at night. Okay. So she's a businesswoman.
She's a businesswoman.
So she's good with money. She's not bad with money. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now we go to verse 19. She holds in her hand the distaff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. So she can she works with clothes. She can make clothes. She can make all sorts of things. Um,
And she welcomes the poor and helps the needy.
mm.
She's prepared.
So is there any love-hate relationship with what we read right now?
I mean, if you want to go verse by verse, I don't know. It's just the whole thing in general
Oh, okay. I
that,
see. I
you
see.
know, the
No, it's okay.
list.
I mean, I think this is the pinnacle of a woman. And yeah,
The whole chapter or what you're going to read?
oh, we're almost there.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to have the full context.
Yeah.
And it says here, verse 22, she makes coverings for her bed, and she is clothed in fine linen and purple. Wow, she has royal colors on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay, I guess, to have nice things.
Yeah.
Women should have nice things, you guys. Okay. 23. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes a seat amongst the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies the merchants with sashes. And she is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. So again, she's a very good businesswoman. Interesting. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. See, so husbands should praise their wives.
Mm-hmm.
Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive, beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord should be praised.
Mm-hmm.
Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. Huh. So in public, city gate is a very political place.
Mm-hmm. That's
so
true.
you should praise a wife at the city gate.
Because of what she's done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Doesn't sound sexist to me.
No.
I mean, that's the argument, right? Like, the Bible favors men all the time, and it makes
Yeah, people
women
say that,
into
yeah.
second-class citizens. But apparently not. Apparently, a woman is very capable of many great things.
Mm-hmm.
So there it is. That's the whole chapter, or the whole passage.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, I like this chapter. I think it's a lot of good. I mean, the way that I have to look at this, though, is like contextually, I have to, obviously, we're not going to like literally do all these things. So, like, we don't, spin our own wool and, flax and stuff like that
Right,
and all
right,
that.
right.
So we have to break this down into just kind of concepts and, kind of figure out like what are the main like characteristics of what is going on in this chapter, So I've heard a lot of times that we can kind of narrow down a couple main things that are characteristics of godly women, and that is to beautify and to multiply.
Oh, that's a good concept. Beautify and to multiply.
And so, I mean, it's not like just word for word in the Bible or anything.
Yeah.
But I think, if we kind of break it down into a couple main concepts, then we can see like all of these things. A lot of it is beautifying. A lot of this is multiplying. Multiplying being not just making many out of one, but like, kind of even replicating yourself. And also in Titus 2, it talks about like older women, like discipling younger women and training them how to work in the home and how to be a good wife and all that stuff. So,
Okay. So how do we translate this now? Because I think some of the roles are kind of skewed nowadays in our modern times where, I mean, we have a traditional family structure. You're a house mom. So you work part-time in like multimedia or social media. Yeah, it's not multimedia anymore. Social media for a homeschool network. but you homeschool the kids and you take care of the house.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you say for families who have both a working mom and a working dad?
So this is controversial too because, like, I am not against women working outside the
Mm-hmm.
home and having a career. I think every woman is different. I think a woman is a woman, and you can be like kind of more, career oriented as a woman and more family oriented as a woman. And I don't know, they're all just all different kinds of people. So
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for everyone, but like, um, and this is like, I don't know if I'm gonna get in trouble for this or not, but like, I think if you can, it is better if you can prioritize managing your own household over working outside the home.
Mm. Yeah.
And that's like hard for me to say, but
It's not hard for me to say. I think that's the best way.
if you can, and it's hard because like we live here, it's like I started working and I didn't want to,
Yeah.
honestly, because it's hard to live here
Mm.
on just like one income, or so I'm trying to like bring in multiple streams of income. But then, I mean, Proverbs 31 talks about doing business and
Mm-hmm.
stuff too. So
Yeah.
I think maybe like the thing, as far as all like working outside the home and inside the home, as far as all that goes, the priority should be your family first
Right.
and foremost. So if
Right.
you can manage like working outside the home, and you can manage like a happy, healthy family,
Mm-hmm.
and you can manage a home decently and have kind of things in order and aren't like everything's not falling apart,
Yeah.
then you can do that.
Right. Yeah.
But I think, so family should always be priority for both husband and wife, but especially for a wife, usually it's the women who are, you know, doing the day to day taking care, primary caretakers for especially little kids,
Mm-hmm.
especially when they're babies. And if you're having babies, like you're going to be the one that's at home,
Yeah.
is concerned about like all the little details and all the little things that go on with like feeding the kids and taking care the husband taking care of all that day to day
Yeah.
stuff. So that's naturally where it falls.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I agree with you. When you say here, it's LA,
Yes.
California, one of the
Southern
most
California.
expensive states in the nation.
And I saw, can I just like interject? I
Yeah.
saw this graph of because people say, oh, well, you make more in there. So
No, you
uh,
don't.
I saw a graph that showed the statistics of like gosh, what is it? Like how much people make compared
Yeah.
to the cost of
The
housing,
ratio.
the ratio. And ours was like one of the worst,
Yeah,
one of the
absolutely.
biggest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the
So,
thing. It's like when people think about it, they think in terms of it's impossible. But we're proof that it's not impossible,
yeah.
and it's not the easiest thing, and it's really challenging. But you're right, because what I found out was throughout the generations, the absence of a relationship, especially in the early years, the absence of relationship with a mother contributes to the lack of learning how to relate to people as children get older.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, especially those early years, the
Mm-hmm.
first 5 years at least, of the
Mm-hmm.
life, a child's life is so important to have stability and to have nurturing and to have someone consistently interacting with them and
Mm-hmm.
loving them and taking care of all of their needs.
Yeah. And we talk about how fathers are needed in the home, but a lot of people don't understand with, in the past, 50, 60 years, there have been a lot of women outside of the home with little kids present. And so they're in daycare or they're with their grandparents or something like that. And the problem with that is they might get the love that's needed with the grandparents, but they don't have a relationship with their mother. It's a huge problem as they become adults and teenagers. And that's why there's a huge disconnect of the family. You know, teenagers rebel or they don't want to be like their parents. Partly due, in a lot of ways, because they didn't make that bond as they were smaller. You know, and then when we talk about like daycare, that's the worst possible situation because one, kids get abused there, and two, they don't have a constant relationship with someone. You know, there's workers there, but you know, they move around or they do this, or when they get older, then they go to kindergarten and it's a different
Different
leader,
person.
another person, and so there isn't that constant building of relationship. They don't learn over the time they have with people how to make intimate bonds.
It's called attachment.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so when I think about that, I'm just like, in my mind, it makes so much sense why millennials and Gen Z have a hard time with relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So that's a huge aspect of being a godly wife is that part of the household, which is children. And you're right. Family should be priority for a godly wife. And I think a lot of men want that.
Yeah. I want that in a wife.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I hear all the time. I hear guys looking for wives, but they don't see that trait. They see women wanting to go on vacations, you know, get a raise in their job so they can post a fancy vacation on Instagram. So it's a huge problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And that, I mean, that's the way when I was going through school, I mean, they trained you to be career minded. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
they do for everyone. You know, we would take little personality tests and they would tell you what career would be best for you.
Oh, right, right, right.
You know, when you get into junior high, high school, and that's normal. Like, you go through school and you live as though I'm working for a career. And I mean, my the way I grew up, both my parents wanted me to go to college
Yeah.
because they didn't complete college, and so I went to college and I have a degree and I got a job, but I always did want to be a wife and have a family since I was young. But I think a lot of people, a lot of women don't have that. I mean, they don't have that drive to have a family, especially if there's dysfunction in the home. Like, you know, if my parents can't get along, I don't want to be married.
Yes.
I don't want to have kids, you know, and bring
Yes.
kids into this dysfunction, you know. And it's so easy just to get into this trap of looking on social media and seeing the world in this framework like, oh, this looks really nice. This is what I want. But it's all me. It's all self-centered. It's all self-focused. And if we go to, you know, brick and mortar public school or whatever, you know, this is what we're trained for. So career, so you can have nice things and do nice things and be comfortable and live and do whatever you want in life.
Yeah.
And that's it. And
And
then I guess you just die alone. I don't know.
yeah, you die alone, and this is called the destruction of society, is what's happening here.
People wonder why they're so unhappy.
Because they're not living the way God designed them to live. That's why there's so much depression and unhappiness in the world. So now we've read all that stuff, and I think it's all good, and that's the pinnacle of a woman, right? And some people might look at the Proverbs 31 woman and go, wow, I can't live up to this standard. But I would say that, you know, that's part of the reason why we're Christian is we get better every day.
Yeah, and I think because I mean it's easy to read this and to think like to read it as a day in the life of a godly wife or a godly woman, you know. And I don't think this is just one day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Like it to me it all, and maybe this is just because it's what I personally kind of struggle with the most is like just the productiveness and the industriousness, because I see it as just like, oh my gosh, this is so much work. I just want the path of least resistance, and I can tend to be, oh, it's too much, I don't want to do it, or that's too much work.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of let things slide sometimes, or but I mean, through my own personal journey, I've learned that my path to Proverbs 31 has been just making mistakes, and just kind of if I don't get on top of chores, or if I don't get on top of like employing or teaching my children, training my children how to take care of things with me, or how to whatever, managing the household well, then it's not gonna go well for me, and it's gonna get too overwhelming, and it's more work to let it go than it is to kind of be industrious, wake up at this time and do the things, and just make myself do the dishes and all this stuff, and make myself make schedules for this is when we clean up, and this is when I vacuum, all this stuff. And I'm not super religious with it. There's some days where I am sick or whatever,
Yeah.
and we're out of town, or we're busy, and we don't do it. But generally, if I put the structure there, then I accomplish so much, and life just goes smoothly. And to me, that's like so much of what Proverbs 31 is talking about.
Yeah.
Is just doing the work and doing the managing and the planning, so that things go well. So like, I'm not worried if we get a cold, because I got, I'm stocked with our, vitamins and all
Right.
this stuff. And like, I'm prepared,
Yeah, that's
because I
I
did the
love
work
that.
beforehand.
Because I'm terrible at that. I'm terrible about health precautions.
So yeah, and that's my job. And so many women, I almost started this, and I'm not the one to start this, but like, I know a little bit, but I almost started this mom university, like, I don't know, Instagram or whatever, because there's so many women who they get married and they have kids, and they're like, how do I keep up with cleaning my house?
Oh
How do I
yeah.
clean? Like, how do
Yeah.
I like we're eating out so much, like, how am I supposed to like make meals and stuff? And no one taught them,
Yeah.
and they didn't learn from their mothers, because their mothers were at work probably.
That's
Which
right.
I don't fault them, I don't blame them, but this is our job.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have to at least pass down, how to manage a household, so that others are, we can help each other, we can prepare each other. And this is what I want to do for our daughter too, because it's important.
Well, I'm glad she likes it.
She does. She's very industrious.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she can
She's
delegate
into it.
tasks.
She's very good at delegating. Yes.
Yeah.
She's into it. She's good.
Since we're talking about kids, I have a funny story about Atlas, her 2-year-old. One day he came running into the house while I was working on the computer, and he's like, "Daddy, there's a something outside, something," and he's like running around like and then he just points to his head and goes, "It's broken."
Poor guy. It's so hard to be two.
Yeah, so basically what happened was he saw a gopher outside. So there's this gopher making holes in her lawn. And
Yeah.
he saw him poking out of a hole, and digging up stuff, and he forgot what it was called
Yeah.
because he knows animals.
Yeah, but he forgot what that one was called.
Yeah. Looks like a mouse, but bigger. Mm-hmm. So,
So then it was so cute, because I heard him say that part, and he was pointing to his head, and he, like, if he were older, he would have said, "What's the name? I can't think of the name.
yeah,
It's on the tip of my tongue." But he's just said, "It's broken." It's broken.
it's broken.
I feel you, bud.
Yeah.
It happens to me all the time.
So, yeah, kids are
Yeah.
a big part of being a godly wife, taking care of them, nurturing them, and forming their beliefs in God. I think that's one of the major roles of a wife.
Yeah, and I mean being a mother, I mean you can't say that you can't be a godly wife without children because there are people who can't have children.
Sure, sure.
So it doesn't exclude you from, from this discussion, I don't think, but most people have children, and that is a big part of being a wife. A lot of times it's being a mother too, and that's so many times in the Bible it was we have so many examples of the mother training the children, even the boys, in in teaching of the Bible and the telling of the stories and the family history, and setting the tone for the whole household,
Yes.
and setting the tone for the family culture, which we
Right.
talked about before too, and yeah, and just training them, and in all the little ways, because we're there, when they're little. So
Yeah. So that's really good. And this is like a restoration of family roles that God set in place. And people, call it traditional family or trad wife. They call it
yeah,
trad wife.
yes,
So there's nothing wrong with that if you want to be a trad wife. And I think it's healthy because sometimes I feel that women want to be men because, like you said, they're trained to be in careers and be competitive and, get those promotions and all those things. But I do feel like for most women, now there are some women that they were born with that and they're good, competitors and all that. But for most women, they're not that way.
yeah, I would agree with that.
So, this has big implications on how people interact with each other. And a lot of men, they're not in college anymore because they just feel like there's no use to go to college. It's mostly women now.
I know. Why is it that the ratio is always like at least 6 to 4 or something
Yeah.
of women to men in college? Why is that?
Yeah, from what I've seen, it's the men in college are there for the hard sciences, and women are there for everything else, liberal arts stuff.
Yeah.
And I can see why because of the differences between men and women's personality, but this has become a problem because now women are getting these careers and not starting families. Now, yes, there are some women who and men that are married that can't have children, and so they're excluded from this. They have a different way of doing things.
Yeah, there's a difference between like not being able to and not wanting to and just
Yeah,
not doing it, choosing not to.
right, and that's the problem. I think it's disobedience to the Lord when you say when you have all your parts working fine and you're able to have babies. When the Lord says, in the first commandment made to humankind was be fruitful and multiply. It's for the reason that God created the earth to be occupied by people. And people have had that whole narrative starting in the late 60s and early 70s about overpopulation. And I heard Elon Musk on X, talk about how that's not true. It's overpopulation in city centers, but there's plenty of land for people to live. So
And grow food and be supported.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And I mean, isn't there a huge decline in births? And so our population
yes,
is decreasing because we're not
yeah.
even like multiplying at a sustainable rate anymore.
No, yeah, yeah. We're not,
Yeah.
and so the third world didn't believe that, the other countries, and so that's why people say, well, we should allow immigrants in if we have low birth rates, and I go, yeah, but that's a problem because a nation is defined by its people. And so I'm an immigrant, so I'm not against immigration. I'm just saying that, you know, if you let us, a certain amount of another country in, then
It's going to change their country.
yeah, it ceases to be the country that it started out to be. But I digress because that's the overall big picture of the decline of a traditional family.
Yeah. Hmm.
Is we lose our identity as a culture, as a people, and all the things that people complain about starts with family. And I think
Hmm.
having a godly wife is key.
Hmm. Or knowing what that is and knowing how to be one.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to think that, people who choose not to have children, there's, I mean, usually I think there's some sort of dysfunction or some hurt in their life
Yeah.
where that would cause them not to,
Right. Right.
or some fear or something. And, I know lots of nice couples that chose
Mm-hmm.
not to have kids. And
Sure.
we had some friends of ours who chose not to because she didn't think she would be able to.
Yeah.
And so she kind of shut that off from her desires, honestly, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And she just kind of, I mean, it's very painful
Yeah.
to think that you couldn't have kids or you wouldn't be able to, or you would be a bad parent, or because of so many things. It could be very hurtful, very painful to think about realistically.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people just, it's easier just to shut it off,
Yeah.
and shut off the
Yeah.
desire and just say, it's just going to be me and my husband. We're going to be happy, and and look at all the stuff we can do without children.
Right.
And
Right.
then, all that stuff is really, it's really attractive because, I wouldn't trade having 4 kids for fewer or anything,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not, easy, and it's not a selfish life. You really have to lay down a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but for a great reward, I think.
Yeah. The great reward is having godly children.
Yeah, and having people take care of you when you're
Yeah,
old.
that's true. That's true.
I mean, just living in family is just a reward in itself, I think.
Yeah. And it was created to be that way.
Yeah.
Now I want to shift gears to, at the end there of the Proverbs 31 woman passage, it talks about a woman who fears the Lord shall be praised.
Hmm.
So what do you think about that? That means a godly wife is spiritual.
Oh, yeah. I mean, how can you be a godly wife without knowing God?
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems kind of hard. So, I mean, if you're talking about being a godly wife, I mean, obviously we're talking about, how to do it God's way.
Yes.
And the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It's the beginning of everything, I think. And I mean, Proverbs, if you're talking about Proverbs, you're talking about wisdom.
Yeah.
And wisdom is so often portrayed as like a woman, as a
Yes.
sister, as a, and you need to, befriend her and know her and,
Yeah.
know wisdom, be well acquainted with wisdom.
Yeah.
And it all stems from the fear of the Lord, wanting to do his will, and knowing him personally, and not just like doing all the laws, but knowing the spirit behind the laws and why he says that, knowing his heart, and fearing him and respecting his sovereignty as
Yeah,
well.
that's right. And I want everyone to know, because there's going to be people watching who aren't Christian or new Christian. When we say fear of the Lord, it doesn't mean that you're afraid of him. He wants to let you come boldly before the throne. You're a child of God. And that's in the context of good relationship between father and child, right? If you had a bad father, then it might be scary when you read in the fear of the Lord. It's not that at all. The fear of the Lord is like, he's so magnificent and so perfect and so holy that it's you're awestruck, and it's about as close to fear as you can get in our definition of fear in English. But that thing is what it means is we obey him because we love him, not the other way around. We don't obey him to get love from him. He already loves us, and that's why we obey, and that's why we follow his ways. And so I think that has a lot to do with the relationship between husband and wife. A godly wife who fears the Lord also treats her husband with respect as well. Of course, not as much as the Lord. The Lord should get all the glory and praise and honor, but men thrive on respect as well as women thrive on love, and so I think that's a good aspect that young women should realize is that it men and women are equals in a marriage, but have different roles and different needs. And so when a woman finds out what her husband's needs are, then she's loved. And the converse is true. You know, when a woman's lacking love, the husband should be first in giving love so that the woman would reciprocate with respect. And that's part of being, spiritual too. It's not devoid of, doing all these things for the household. It's not separated from the relationships between husband and wife.
Yeah, it's all intertwined, and it's I mean, people look at the word wives have to submit to their husbands and have to respect them, respect authority, and I think it's so easily misconstrued because I don't think people understand that that comes from love
Right.
and from being
Right.
loved, and it comes out of a holy place and not a fearful place.
Yes. Yes.
And I serve my family, and I want to, you know, meet your needs because I love you,
Right.
not
Right.
because you're demanding that of me,
Yes.
because it's
Yes.
of my own free will, because life goes
Mm-hmm.
well that way. And it's because I love because I'm freely loved.
That's right. That's right. And that's so important today because a lot of men and women, young men and women, aren't getting married because a lot of times they just don't know how to interact with each other. They don't understand what we're talking about, how being vulnerable with one another produces the free will to love one another and to provide the needs. It's scary. It's scary to be vulnerable to someone, but that's what you have to practice if you want to get married, in relationships. And so I get it. I get why a lot of young people have a hard time nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not ingrained in them. It's kind of a foreign concept. There's this C.S. Lewis quote about God, and I think it sums up. We're talking about the fear of the Lord.
Yeah.
It sums it up so well. And one of his, I think it was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, one of his first Narnia book, and the quote is about Aslan the lion, which kind of is a symbol for God. And one of the children says, "Of course, he isn't safe, but he's good.
Yeah.
He's not a tame lion."
Yes. I love that.
So he's not safe. I mean, and I think a lion is he's the lion and the lamb.
Yeah.
But
Both.
I think a lion is a great picture of the Lord and the fear of the Lord, because it's like he can smite me. You know what I mean? Like he has the authority and the power
Yeah.
to do away with us all.
Yeah.
But he's good.
But he's
But
good.
he won't. So, and I think that's because of his great love, and that sums up so well the fear of the Lord, that we have to know that that's part of him too, is that he is that powerful, but he is good.
Yeah. And that's what a woman should understand. And that carries over to the rest of the family. And so one of the main complaints I get from young men looking for a wife is that there's not a lot of women that fear the Lord. Now, that could be true, it could be untrue. I've noticed that there are many more women in church than men.
Yeah.
But I do notice even the women that go to church that are single and looking for husbands, they don't know how to meet the needs of a man. They treat men as another woman, and same with men.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
And it's like, what happened to that? I mean, the whole kind of feminizing men and,
Yeah.
masculating women is just, it just messes up so much,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and it's so much so that like we don't even know like what a woman is, characteristics of a woman or a wife or,
Yeah.
and so we have no respect for that. And because we don't even have knowledge of what that is anymore.
Nope, not at all. And I've walked into the churches where the worship leader is a man,
Mm-hmm.
but very feminized.
Right.
And then a woman comes out and is all girl bossy, whether she's the preacher or just doing announcements. And I
Mm-hmm.
go, I'm in the wrong house. You know what I mean? It's
Are you
just
against
weird.
women being in?
No, I mean, like, there's examples in the Bible where women took leadership roles, like
Mm-hmm.
Deborah
In the church? Yeah.
and the church, and Miriam was a prophet, and even
Mm-hmm.
in the New Testament there was women prophets.
Mm-hmm.
So they can hear from the Lord and speak of the Lord. But the roles, that you're portraying
Mm-hmm.
is not the norm in that case.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you come into this place where the roles are reversed, it's only going to appeal to a small amount of people. And I think that is because the Lord made men and women different. Now, again, I've seen women leaders are capable leaders, like your
Mm-hmm.
sister is one of them.
and
And
and male worship leaders who are still men
are still
and
men. Yeah.
love worshiping the
Yeah.
Lord, and that's
Yeah.
great.
And that's great. It's just what we need to understand is that in the home, there is distinct roles in the Bible, and a godly woman understands these roles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, all you godly women out there need to help me train up our children and part of this multiplying thing is is not just limited to having children. I mean,
Hmm.
even if you're not married, we're talking about wives here, but like we should be like older, more experienced women should be discipling younger women, even if I mean our children first because they're right before us and they're ours, but other younger women as well. Like don't limit yourself to well, I don't have kids, so I'm exempt, or I'm not married, so I'm exempt. But we should be, training younger women and being involved in other younger women's lives too. And there's so much that they can glean from us, and that's how I learn. It's just I'm just gleaning, just like being around people and just noticing how other moms talk, or how moms with more kids or more older moms, just noticing how they talk about normal life. And I'm like, that's a total revelation to me, because that's their normal perspective is like, I never thought about it that way. Like I should, and it just like rubs off on you. And so just like kind of being in close proximity and just like living life and like getting to know younger women and
Hmm.
and or younger girls. And I was discipled when I was like 13 or so by
Hmm.
by a woman with a friend of mine, and that was very intentional. But there are also things that just by kind of just getting involved and getting to know people, just there are things that are kind of unintentional that happen in really powerful ways too.
I agree. I agree. I think that's needed in all of our churches is the older women training the younger women for life,
Mm-hmm.
for marriage, for
Mm-hmm.
raising children.
Just to get like that
Yeah.
general healthy perspective on life, that means so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's very traditional and very good because God created it that way. Um, I want to speak to the men that might be watching this, looking for characteristics of their future wives. In 1 Peter 3:7, it says, "Husbands in the same way." So Peter started talking about wives submitting
Mm-hmm.
to their husbands, of course. But then he speaks to the husbands. He says, "In the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives and treat them with respect.
Mm-hmm.
So, as well as love,
Mm-hmm.
as the weaker partner." So, the weaker partner business, it doesn't mean what Peter is saying here. It doesn't mean like they're less of a person,
Mm-hmm.
or they're not an adult. No, they're talking about the difference between a man and a woman when it comes to like emotions and different things like that.
Or even physically too. I mean,
Physically, yeah. And so he says here, respect, treat them with respect as the weaker partner, as heirs. So that's someone of equal status. If we're both heirs as men and women, he says, respect the weaker partner as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. So one aspect of a godly wife is that she has she is the key to effective prayers. It's so true. It's so true. I
how
know
have you
dudes.
experienced this?
I know dudes that don't treat their wives right, and their prayers are very much hindered because God wants them to fix the relationship first. Because being a godly wife means you are one flesh with your husband, and so if you're not in one accord and united, you're praying separately, and God's like, "What am I
We're
going to
like
do?"
against each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer your prayer and not yours. So that's a pro tip, you guys. That's a pro tip. When you're looking for a wife, just remember, make sure she loves Jesus more than you, and you'll do well. And
That'll push you to love Jesus more than her.
that's right.
Just be a competition your whole life.
That's right. That's right. And that's the thing. When we move forward into marriage, and you're looking for a godly woman to be a wife, look for that. Look for how she treats children, how she respects your family members, and I think you'll do well, especially when she fears the Lord. Yeah.
Amen.
Amen. Well, that's it for today. And as you can see, I have a very, very godly wife, and she does everything in Proverbs 31 well.
Okay.
I love her.
Wow.
And I hope you guys find a wife like her. And we'll see you next time. Godspeed and God bless. Bye.
Bye.